Who is one actor/actress that you can never stand watching no matter what they are in? Not quite. When Lovitz replaced Hartman on news radio, he blamed Dick for Hartman's death. Dick wasn't having it, so this created a very dour atmosphere until the producers stepped in and told them to settle it. Lovitz dug deep, and found it within himself to stop blaming Dick, and apologized. Dick accepted. Years later, Dick and a friend burst into a restaurant owned by Lovitz, and completely trashed out of their gourds cause a commotion. Lovitz tries to defuse the situation by cajoling Dick away from guests and keeping him from bothering people, but things just got out of hand and Lovitz wound up having to kick them out. The next night at one of Lovitz's regular comedy shows, Dick shows up. Lovitz thinks he's here to apologize for the other night, and meets him in the lobby after the show ends. Dick isn't. Dick informs Lovitz that he never actually forgave Lovitz for blaming Phil Hartman's death on him, and that he's put the Phil Hartman hex on Lovitz. That's when Lovitz put Dick's head through a bar. I was in an episode of Glee. She's either totally method or a huge jerk IRL. Edit, this'll teach me to post before bed. It's not that interesting. So I was a background performer in the final episode of Glee. I was in the cafeteria flashback when Rachel met Kurt for the first time. My elbow, clad in a mustard yellow cardigan, makes a brief appearance. I was sitting right behind Lee when they were doing the various levels of close-ups of her. My back was turned, and as the murmurs had made the rounds of her getting BG actors fired for things, so I wasn't about to do anything other than my job. We're 5 to 10 takes into the scene, each one, at least as far as I can hear, identical to the last, when she just explodes, yelling about people getting into her eyeline. So production screeches to a halt while this is fixed. For those who might not know, typically when you film things there's one camera. You set it up and film one person talking, then move it and do the other person. While this happens, all the lights, carts of equipment, cables, assistants, hair and makeup people, etc., are literally behind the camera. Certainly still and quiet while filming, be definitely visible to the person being filmed. Fun tip, if I wanted to watch the filming, my trick was always to stand right by an equipment cart, as I could be certain that was not going to be on camera. I once had to coordinate a guest for a special in the field segment for his late night show, and Corden was so late and inconsiderate and rude that he made several people cry. He also personally lashed out at me for asking him to stop being so mean to people. Their legal team called after to try to confirm that we wouldn't sue, and they sent several insane gift baskets to try to make up for it. We didn't sue, we ate the cookies, and we all still hated him. Corden hates me on a personal level, so it sparks incredible joy for me to see this much well-earned hate towards him. Edit 1, I've never gotten so many upvotes or awards. This is insane. Thank you all for the support. Edit 2, we didn't sue because it's really hard to win a case like that, the people who cried didn't want to, and it appeared that the lawyers were calling as part of a standard procedure. I guess this happens a lot. We did ensure that the people who cried got to take home the insanely large gift baskets. When I was younger, around 10 to 12 years ago, I had a huge crush on Leto after hearing a few 30 Seconds to Mars songs. Needless to say, I rushed to the internet to find other fangirls to commiserate with. Instead, I found several forum threads where teen girls were discussing his proclivity for having sex/trying to have sex with very young teenagers, 12 to 16, who went to his gigs. Some first and second hand accounts, others just rumors. Just to be clear, I don't know if any of it was true, but I dropped my interest in him and his music pretty damn quick. I can't find any of those old forum posts today, but it seemed to be common knowledge in these groups. Maybe it was all made up, but I still get a very icky feeling when I see him on screen. Can't help but wonder if anything incriminating will come out on the guy someday. Edit, forgot that I read a more recent account of him being super abusive to a sexual partner and also being accused of trying to get with under 18s by other celebrities. If any of this stuff is true, I hope it comes out. His physique would make him an excellent protagonist in a manipulation horror, where a man who's just a normal office worker that likes to lift gets blackmailed online. The whole movie would be him getting emotionally fucked with by the hacker, making him do stuff like peeing himself in public, grabbing some person's ass at a business meeting, getting arrested for petty theft, stuff like that. The Rock would gradually spiral down into crime because his reputation would have absolutely tanked everywhere he's gone. Maybe he starts selling his body cause that's all he has left, and the hacker pushes him into it. The hacker then gets the money that The Rock makes while being a prostitute, basically being his pimp. He's then forced to do heroin continually until he's completely dependent, the hacker sending monthly doses to keep him compliant, setting up more and more clients to the point where The Rock can't take it anymore and he offs himself. The final scene is the hacker himself, and he's got 5 monitors each with a different dude he's doing this to. Turns out he finds attractive people, ruins their lives, forces them into prostitution and hard drugs to make money. It's just a thought. I hate to be mean, but after he's all that, Addison Rae. Edit, just to be clear, I don't hate Addison Rae. I think she's a little tone deaf at times and I sometimes don't understand why she's famous. She has some potential as an actress imo. If she just put more effort into learning the art by spending more time at an acting school where she can get a little criticism about her line deliveries, she would be halfway decent. If she did this the first time around, I don't think she would have gotten as much criticism for this movie as she did because the storyline itself wasn't that bad. Religion. I understand it has offered countless people peace of mind, a moral compass, a sense of community, and many other benefits. But in my mind, religion, regardless of which you choose, cause let's face it, you and your congregates are the only ones who think you're in the right religion. The amount of time, money, and blood spent and wasted in the name of religion far exceeds any good it has done. Religion is responsible for many of local culture as well, so it is not as if a religion is something confined and separate in society. It is not hard to see how a religion is absolutely everywhere, regardless of region. Religion was created with good intentions, I'm sure. To explain the unexplainable, to control the otherwise lawless masses. But we've gotten too far from its good intentions and now we just are happy to ignore each other and accept the suffering of entire peoples, all because some people don't like another people's religion. My sister. Thanks to her, I have serious issues with my self-worth, self-esteem, and have had serious issues with suicidal thoughts or believing that the world would be better off without me in it. My brother has similar issues and I know they're from her. My parents rarely ever fought about anything except my dad wanting to instill consequences for her actions and my mom wanting her to get away with murder. She was a serious bully in high school and college and has been in the grown-up world now too. She has tried to break up friends' and family's relationships just for shits and giggles. She's neglected animals and people because it doesn't interest her to pay attention to them. The most recent thing I've heard about her is that someone filed an insurance claim against her because her car door hit theirs and caused several $100s in damage, and since she said the wind blew the door out of her hand on a day where there was very little wind, I'm almost certain it was malicious. The world would absolutely, definitely, totally be better without her or people like her in it. It's funny. At one point guns were thought of as the great equalizer. The thought goes that prior to guns, especially handguns, the largest and strongest person always ruled any situation because they could force anyone else to do their bidding. You see this a lot in the animal kingdom. With the invention of the gun, even the meekest individual was the equal of the strongest. I suppose that with modern societies perhaps we have other ways that keep people generally equal. That said, even in modern societies there are situations where things break down, e.g. looting and rioting, and if I were dropped into one of those situations I'd be slightly less terrified with a gun than without, even knowing that the other guy might also have a gun. Honestly, I feel like half of you folks are conflating capitalism and the free market, and the other half of you folks are conflating capitalism and crony capitalism. Smiley face. Capitalism is usually described as bad because it does nothing to prevent the accumulation of capital into a smaller and smaller set of hands. The main mechanisms by which this happens are twofold. Having more capital means you earn more, which means you can generally have more surplus with which to acquire more capital. Having more capital means you have more effective political power, whether by means of advertising or lobbying or outright bribery, depending on how corrupt the state is. Capitalism would be a lot more palatable to a lot more people if those two positive feedback loops were broken. Anyone who has designed a system that's designed to last for a long time knows that positive feedback loops are a great way to destabilize things in an accelerating way. Which is why I personally think that late-stage capitalism is probably the best descriptor I see. I tend personally to be in favor of what one might call a socialist free market, probably best modeled by the idea that in general employees are required to own shares in a company commensurate with the amount of work they put in, which requires some way of removing the burden of initial risk from the founder to be fair. Did you read the info I posted from Wikipedia? Estimates of the numbers of pregnancies from rape vary widely. 9 recent estimates suggest that rape conception happens between 25,000 and 32,000 times each year in the U.S. In a 1996 three-year longitudinal study of 4,000 American women, physician Melissa Holmes estimated from data from her study that forced sexual intercourse causes over 32,000 pregnancies in the United States each year. Physician Felicia H. Stewart and economist James Trussell estimated that the 333,000 assaults and rapes reported in the U.S. in 1998 caused about 25,000 pregnancies, and up to 22,000 of those pregnancies could have been prevented by prompt medical treatment, such as emergency contraception. 11. And that's only recent information. It makes zero sense how upset people are getting about the facts that I'm sharing. Pregnancy from rape has always been a serious problem, though luckily many of us now have access to birth control and abortion. Let's put aside Murdoch's propagandizing in America, which is bad enough, but only scratches the surface of how terrible he has truly been for humanity. Murdoch actively communicates with the Chinese Communist Party, and has very deliberately allowed his networks in China to transmit communist propaganda so he can profit. The genocide of the Uyghurs. Done with Murdoch's help. China's oppression of Hong Kong? Same. China's marginalizing of the Tibetan people and the Taiwanese on the world stage? Murdoch has helped with that too. In exchange for money, he has actively contributed to the oppression of over 1 billion people in one country. But that's not all. It was Murdoch who led the propaganda charge for not only the endless war in Afghanistan, but the Iraq War. It was Murdoch who gladly propped up the corrupt administration of Benjamin Netanyahu. The result? Millions dead across the Middle East, and multiple nations destabilized, most notably Syria, in which civil war still rages today. The Mideast-lone democracy, Israel, has been seriously damaged on the world stage because of Murdoch. But that's still not all. Murdoch happily supported colonial powers that exploited the labor and resources of African peoples, and the effects of this are still present today, as seen in the many impoverished areas on the African continent. But wait, there's more. Whose media pushed for Brexit, something that will harm the economy and people of the UK for decades to come, and may very well lead to renewed violence in Northern Ireland and possibly even the breakup of the UK itself. Murdoch, of course. Yep. My grandma had it, and my mom, who had just retired, took care of her for 3 years before she couldn't do it anymore, and my grandma moved to a nursing home. My aunt and uncle did pretty much fuck all, maybe called once a month maybe. None of the heavy lifting, literally or figuratively. Fast forward 3 YRS, I start to notice my mom mixing up her words and writing herself notes that look like nonsense after she'd been sharp as a tack for 65 years. I take care of her, living with her, unpaid, 24/7, and my 2 sisters who live in the same city just can't bother to lift a finger, unless it's to criticize her care or comb through my mom's bank records looking for where I'm stealing from her. Obviously I wasn't. That destroyed our relationship when we'd previously all been super close. We'd all 3 at one point even moved out of our mom's house into another house together. I mean, we were close. But now it's hard for me to not feel massively resentful and still furious for how unnecessarily hard they made that whole experience for me. So yeah, the family destruction is a casualty itself that a lot of times isn't talked about. Last spring, I started waking up with red spots all over my body. Every day that I woke up, there would be more. I started to panic research what the hell could be biting me, and I was certain it was bed bugs. I was so itchy that I couldn't do anything but sit and stare at the floor because it took everything not to scratch myself. I put bed bug dust under my bed, and I took the socket plates off the walls and put more bed bug dust in that too. I stripped my mattress, treated it with bed bug foam mattress spray 3 times, put a mattress protector specifically for bed bugs, washed all of my sheets 3 times, and then I struggled to sleep, which I couldn't from the constant, itching paranoia. The next morning, I woke up with more bites. I had more than 100 red marks on my abdomen, chest, collarbones, and inside of my arms and thighs. I decided it was finally time to go to the doctor to get some sort of relief. These aren't bed bug bites. I stopped and looked at him like he had grown a second head. Are you kidding me? He confirmed that they weren't, and that he believed that I had a skin condition known as pityriasis rosacea. In my case, he thought that it was from stress. I'm a pre-med college student, and I was in the middle of midterms. I had just gotten hired at a new job, my car was totaled from a hailstorm, and every night I went to bed I was more and more stressed because I thought bed bugs were ravaging me as I slept. As it turns out, the red marks were only spreading because I was so stressed about the bed bugs. As soon as he diagnosed me, the red marks stopped spreading. Eventually, I researched the condition to the point where I found that going to a tanning salon would help the marks go away faster. Point of the story: bed bugs suck and the human brain is insanely powerful. I had a horse from the start of the game. He was my baby. We rode through thick and thin together and I was committed to keeping him the whole game. I was racing out of St. Dennis one day coming across the bridge when some Lemoyne raiders opened up with a fucking cannon on me. Blew the horse right out from under me and I didn't have a chance to save him. No save I could go back to. He was gone. I killed the raiders that ambushed me, put on all black clothes, and spent the next 8 hours of real-world time systematically hunting down and killing every Lemoyne raider I could find. My new horse's name was Vengeance. A few hours later I had calmed down, but I was riding out of town and a random passerby said, "Hey, you're that coward that took our house," or something similar. I looked over. It was a Lemoyne raider. I lassoed and hogtied him before taking him out into the swamps. I took him off the back of my horse and took him to the water's edge and dropped him. He was screaming obscenities and then clearly knew fear. I walked away as an alligator closed in and bit his fucking head off. I eventually had Buell as my final horse, which was a whole other emotional roller coaster given Arthur's final chapter, I promised. Dude, don't read Dwarf Fortress combat logs if you have an active imagination. My favorite moment was when I drafted a female dwarf into my military. I was unaware at the time that dwarf mothers carry their children on them at all times until they are fully grown. That means that your female soldiers will be going into war carrying their babies. There was a small goblin siege, about 15 goblins or so. My military was small but well trained. One of my dwarf soldiers was a young mother, and she was carrying her baby with her. My forces met the goblins on the battlefield. Horrible, violent combat ensues. Some of my dwarves are gravely wounded, some goblins fall. Then one goblin gets a lucky hit in with his spear, instantly killing the baby. The mother instantly goes insane from rage. She drops her weapons and starts pulling apart the goblins. She grips fingers, limbs, eyeballs. She twists until the organ dislocates and rips off. When a goblin finally succumbs to its injuries, she instantly lunges at the next one. Goblins are running in terror. No one is fast enough. She is a missile of horrid, dwarven vengeance. When all is done, goblin parts are scattered over the fields in front of the fortress. Some wounded dwarves drag themselves to the infirmary, and the heroine of battle falls into a deep, inconsolable despair. She dies weeks later of depression. Fucking dwarf fortress man.